Welcome to the Myth and Magic Authors Podcast, folklore and fantasy topics aimed at creative storytellers. To write stories and challenge your brain with exciting ideas, delve into these presentations and reflections. See how fantasy realms are based on actual world history, legend, and lore. Study fairy tales, nature fables, and supernaturalism to engage in a jumble of concepts that will trigger your fancy and get you writing imaginatively. Now, here's your host, Neil Mack.
Hello, fantasy fiction fans and fantasy writers everywhere, and an especial welcome to any NaNoWriMo writers out there who are listening for the first time. Good luck with your project. I'm sure it will go well, and stick with it, and stick with the discipline of it. So, as we head into November and into the monthly novel writing challenge, known as NaNoWriMo, we've gone beyond our month of prep, known as Preptober, and we should be writing now. So we should be heads down, and we should be churning out 2,200 words a day. No edit, no fixes, just pure writing. But I want to remind you that we covered what I called the ABCs of applied writing during the Preptober month, but only going up to B, which was build a baseline for your plot, and A, if you recall, was how to write acoustically. Now, I covered the B of building a baseline for your plot, and I used a long analogy, and I'm sorry about that, but I wanted to illustrate what I thought an unfinished novel might look like to a writer, not to a reader, to a writer. And I compared it to a jumble of shiny garments. And all these shiny garments were the chapters, and they were ready to hang out onto the plot line, which looked to me like an old-fashioned washing line. So just as we enter National Novel Writing Month now, day number 3 is when I'm recording this. By the time this goes out, it'll be Wednesday, the first Wednesday of the month. Well, as we enter into the month, I wanted to wrap up the ABCs of applied writing by ending this particular discourse with cause, C for cause, which is cause and effect. What I wanted to do, if that's okay with you, is to go back to the washing line symbol. Now, I grab a huge blanket and I put it on the washing line. And I'm talking about an old-fashioned washing line, one of those long ones which go up the whole of your backyard. I'm not talking about a whirly line now. I put the blanket on the line and it uses up a lot of pegs. And because it's so big, I haven't got any choice. I really have to put it into the centre of the washing line. But now it weighs the whole line down and it droops almost to the floor. I don't want it to be touching the muddy floor. And it threatens to unbalance the whole line, the whole thing. Now, if I put it nearer one of the two ends, where the line is at least stretched taut, it's highly strung at the ends, then this soggy blanket will not sag to the ground. But then, if I did do that, I would have to fold it, perhaps more neatly than I wanted to. But the good thing is that I wouldn't need to use so many pegs. And I'd also learn that maybe as I went along, I could peg one end of one article to the beginning end of the next article, and so on, and thus I'd be more economical with my pegging use. And this is what I like to call the cause and effect of washing line uploading. Because the cause is that some things are going to be heavy and some things are going to be light, and the effect is if you actually rearrange them and move them around a bit and use your pegs sensibly, then you can fill out your line. Putting your novel together works in exactly the same way. You'll have a casual jumble of items at the end of your writing period. Hopefully that'll be a whole 30 days of NaNoWriMo. And then when you're ready to hang these jumble of items onto your plotline structure, you might need to switch things around a bit, or peg things in a different order, or in more efficient or innovative ways until you get that plotline correct and it's hanging properly. Now, in the early stages of writing, I encourage you to work on your novel in easily manageable chunks. I don't think it's a good idea, and people out there will be doing this, and that's fine, but I don't think it's a good idea to start like Snoopy the dog did with It Was a Dark and Stormy Night. Snoopy the dog always writes page 1, chapter 1, it was a dark, stormy night, and then it works all the way through in a chronological order. I think it's much more sensible idea to write your novel in manageable chunks. Write scenes and then stick them together afterwards. And if you want to use the washing line analogy, then each experience, which are the items, in other words, the experiences are the flashbacks and the vignettes and the exploits of your heroes and the triumphs and their foreshadowings and the defeats and the redemptions. All of these things are the experiences that your character faces and your characters will undergo. If you like, it's a list of ordeals and achievements. Should be treated as colour-fast separates. And you know, don't you, and our experience shows us that fabrics are not all made in the same way. So you would need to create a pile of small and lightweight things. You might need to create a pile of things which are red and dangerous in the wash. You might need to create a pile of things which could take a good bashing. And you know the worst mistake of all you can make is to mix colours or mix types in a wash cycle. And you'll know that the heavier items require a lot more work than the flimsy items, but they all need some preparation. So continuing with the long analogy, you would need to separate your items out. You'd need to choose the right settings. You'd need to handle your delicates with care. You'd need to acknowledge that some items might take longer to prepare than others. And you'd need to acknowledge that some items might need a bit of unravelling first. And you'd need to sort your items by judging how important they would be and how much improvement might be required. You'd need to perhaps pre-treat some items before the main agitation, and this would get the best results. And you'd probably need to use some partitions to help sort things out later, much later in the cycle. So that's your cause and your effect. So, continuing with the NaNoWriMo writing your novel, it may well be your first ever novel. On the other side of the coin, it may be your 15th novel you've written, but you still want to get more out of it. What I wanted to do, I wanted to give you 5 ways to over-deliver on your next novel. So here are 5 ways to do it. Way number 1, make sure you treat your characters as real actors who are playing their part. Treat them like valuable artistes. So what does this mean? Well, it means that a person on a page is a real person. So that's the first concept to get into your head. The participants in your novel have their own emotions, their own needs, their own desires, and their own basic requirements even before they came to your story. But you, the author, and I want you to think of yourself as a movie director. You, the author and director, want these troopers to appear and act in your production. So just to recap, the participants in your novel have their own desires and they are real people before they come to your door. Now you, the author and the director, want them to appear in your production. So be kind to them, negotiate with them, reward them, reassure them, and flatter them. I like to imagine that my characters are waiting outside in a dressing room to one side, and they're preparing their lines. And then I walk in, the author-director, I walk in and I announce that I'm looking, for example, for a hero for the next scene, or a champion, or maybe a rogue, or even a minor role. I'm looking for a bartender or a school secretary. And everybody who wants that part will jump up and say, oh yeah, me, choose me, because they all want a part in your production. Think of it like this. If I offered you or your best friend, for example, a minor role, but in a big budget movie, you, and certainly your friend as well, would take it seriously, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want to give the role some personality, some oomph, some pizzazz, some persona, or other unique, unquantifiable glamour? Yes, of course you would. So treat your people, your background roles, as well as your main heroes, as performance players in your theatre, or, like I've said earlier, in your movie. Make sure your characters are real people before they start acting the part. Number 2, give all your people a set of positive and negative traits. And I mean everyone. If you fill your actors with what I call kinetic potential, then they won't let you down. They will entertain you and they will reward you. But this means that you will have to make them wholly rounded individuals. And this will require them to take on some negative as well as positive traits. And of course, vice versa for antagonists, which I'll go on to in a minute. So find 2 or 3 negative traits for your protagonist. For example, a Harry Potter type character is also impulsive and obsessive and reckless. Now, you can choose your own negative traits for Harry Potter, but those are just my suggestions. But you see how I can find negatives about somebody as heroic as Harry Potter. And like I say, find some positive traits for your antagonist. You don't have to make your antagonist admirable or likeable, but why not make him, her or it more convincing by creating a truly, genuinely 3-dimensional anti-hero that betrays positive traits as well as negative traits. And to give you some basic examples, Lord Voldemort is a charismatic leader, isn't he? Darth Vader is a skilled space pilot, isn't he? And Dracula was and is an attentive and passionate lover, isn't he? Now, I use the negative trait thesaurus for this, and it's a fantastic dictionary by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi, and I hope you will too. It helps because it provides the visual clues, the non-verbal tics, if you like, which means you'll end up showing traits rather than talking about them and telling them, and that's always a good thing. So make sure you fill your protagonist with negative traits and give a few positive traits to your baddies. Number 3, give your characters identifiable obstacles. What does identifiable mean? Well, we don't all have a physical disadvantage, do we? We don't all have a history of abuse, do we? We're not all orphans, are we? We're not all brought up in a world of conflict. Some of us are brought up in a loving family with both parents around us and everything we've ever needed. We haven't been brought up in danger or in poverty. So it's hard for us. It's hard for the readership to relate to some of those burdens, isn't it? On the other side of the coin, there are things that we have all experienced. For example, we've all lost something that we treasured. We've all found ourselves on the wrong side of an event or on the wrong side of an argument. We've all done poorly in an important test, a test which could theoretically change the course of our life. We've all felt bad because we could not achieve something that we wanted to achieve. We've all missed out on a treat or on a reward. We've all been so scared about not living up to somebody else's standards, or we've been so scared about not living up to our own standards at times. We've also all been disappointed. So give your character obstacles that they will deal with but are understandable, in other words, identifiable to real readers. Then your real reader can find empathy with your real character. Now, if you follow this advice, your audience will identify with your characters and all their strengths and weaknesses, and their struggles will be realistic. Now, I'm not saying you have to rule out physical disadvantages or abuse or magic or theatre, but also put in your identifiable obstacles too. Number 4, what's in Area 51? Don't you just love a mystery? Now, what's yours? What's yours in this story? And I emphasise that your story does not have to be a detective novel or a thriller, or a mystery to have an enigma inside it. because all stories can be vastly improved with a fascinating hidden secret. Have you conceived of one yet? I hope you have, because even if it's a sideshow to key events, it will still continue to drive your narrative along. Think of your mystery element like a new ship. It has to be designed, it has to be tested, it has to be launched at some stage, preferably early on, and you have to talk about it, and other people have to talk about it, and it should be seen from a distance, and then perhaps it goes over the horizon and it's lost, although every now and again it may appear in view again, but from a distance, and this will be at various times. But we never get aboard. Nobody ever gets on board this ship. Well, not until the time is right, and the time is right is at the end of the story when you have the big reveal. So put mystery into your story. Number 5 is make your players mysterious by giving them facets of character. This will mean that your actors will not just be inexplicable mystagogues or carbon copy tropes. They'll be real 3D people. Now, we know that traits reveal a character's underlying values or beliefs. But to make them even more interesting and make them more compelling and make them more like real humans, we need to make their negative and their positive traits, like I discussed earlier, slightly more interesting by rooting out facets. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's say your hero is friendly, and that's obviously a positive trait. Doesn't that also mean that we can easily manipulate that person? Would it also mean, if the person was friendly, that abusive people could burden that person with problems? Abusive people would cause friendly folk a lot of harm because they could make them do things they'd rather not do. And being friendly all the time, which is a positive trait, often means that that person never gets a chance to follow their own dreams and their own wishes. They end up just doing things for other people. Now think about it. Every single positive trait has a facet of negativity in it. Say, for example, your antagonist is impatient. This is a negative trait. But doesn't that mean that they work promptly on projects? Doesn't that mean they get things done quickly? They work to strict deadlines. They're remarkably well organised and they're generally well prepared. So a negative trait has a good facet inside it. A positive trait has a negative facet inside it. If you hold up a diamond, it's a diamond and it's a beautiful thing. But when you turn it in the light, you see the facets in that diamond. There are facets of good and there are facets of bad inside bad and good. These are, if you like, the counterparts of the traits. Now, if you work on the facets of character and the contradictions that are found inside traits, then you will create characters that become more mysterious and at the same time they will become magically relatable. So that's the 5 ways you can over-deliver in your next novel. To recap, make your characters as real as possible by imagining that they are actors waiting to play their part. If you follow that advice, your characters will not be cardboard cutouts of real people, but they will absolutely be proper and real people. Give your people a set of positive and negative traits. You don't have to make them all absolutely admirable or absolutely detestable. Give them a little bit of both. This will make them seem more realistic. Give your characters a set of identifiable obstacles. If you follow that advice, your audience will identify with your characters' strengths and weaknesses, and their struggles will be realistic. Put a mystery into your story, a mystery which you gradually unravel and you don't reveal until the end. And then finally, give your characters tiny little interesting bad parts of the good and the good parts of the bad. Good luck with your next novel. Let me know how you're getting on with it. Please tweet me at NeilMach at NeilMach. And I'd love to hear how you're getting on, and keep in contact with me on Twitter and on my Facebook page, and keep that head down and keep writing and keep bringing those little words in. Well done to everybody out there who's embarking on NaNoWriMo this year, and thank you very much for listening to the show.